Hello there, welcome back here on Prime Morning. It's time for us to get into our conversation on Prime Insight. You can send us your messages ahead of time. Our social media pages, Joy Prime TV, on Facebook, Instagram, and on Twitter. Our WhatsApp line is very active. You can also join us over there. If you've got any experience on child labor you want to send to us, you want to share with us, you can go ahead and send it to us. We'll be reading them as we move on. We're streaming live on Facebook, so you can tell your friends who are unable to watch us from the television that we're streaming live is Joy Prime TV on Facebook. That's where you can join the streaming. Now, don't forget that on Sunday at 8:30, we've got cues and lyrics happening. The contestants are always ready to give you the very best of performances. You don't want to miss out on that one. So please make sure that you're part of that viewing public on Sunday, 8:30 p.m. right here on Joy Prime TV. We'd love to also get your feedback on what's happening on the show, and also the fact that you need to vote to make sure that your favorite stays in the competition is very, very necessary. All right, so that's what it is. But let's get into the conversation this morning and to wits. Now, according to estimates, developing countries alone, there are about 250 million children in the age group of 5 and 17 years who are actually toiling in economic activity. That's we're looking at 1 out of every 6 children in the world today. In absolute terms, it's in Asia, excluding Japan, that has the most child workers, approximately 61% of the world's total. Now in Ghana, roughly 33% of children in northern Ghana are employed, compared to 7.8% in southern Ghana. In the Upper West region, Ghana, here in Ghana, which is also more rural, 44% of children in that age range are involved in child labor to some degree. If you're putting your child in any form of economic activity for at least 1 hour per week, and or domestic chores for at least 7 hours per week, and or school labor for at least 5 hours per week, then you're about to be in trouble, because you're literally practicing child labor. That didn't sound well with you, I'm sure, but the objective of this conversation is to make sure you get more clarity on what exactly child labor is all about and what you stand to gain or lose in terms of that conversation. Right here on the show, in the studio to help me with the conversation, Esther Ofori Ajimai is the Assistant Chief Labor Officer, Labor Department, and she's here with us in studio. And also Mr. Andrew Stego is also the Deputy General Secretary, the General Agricultural Workers Union of Ghana. GAU is also here with me in the studio this morning. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Welcome to the show.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I hope you're good.
Very good. Yourself?
I'm very well, thanks for asking. And Mr. Tego says that, oh, KMG, this small thing that we're about to do, I know, address the shepherds. It's the job. It's the job that makes me do so. But of course, it's good to have you in the studio. I'm grateful that you're able to make it this morning.
Nice meeting you too.
Great. So maybe I'd like to start with you then, because of where you're coming from. Practically, when we say child labor, I'm sure a lot of people are not really getting the understanding well. Some people even feel like I have the capacity to make anybody do anything for me at any point in time. If the person is a child, you have no concern about it. Even if it's my child, that's even a different issue altogether. In normal terms, when we say child labor, what exactly are we referring to?
Thank you very much. When we say child, I just want to make a clear distinction between child labor and child work.
Okay.
Because many a times when people are asked what child labor is, the general understanding out there is that children cannot do any work whatsoever.
Okay.
But there's a clear distinction between child labor and child work. When we say child labor, according to the 1992 Constitution of the Republic of Ghana, Article 28, Section 2, it says child labor is any work engaged by a child. I mean, if I say work, I mean employment of work engaged by children that constitutes a threat to their health, their education, and general development of the child. Okay. So in basic terms, it is any work that a child engages in that prevents the child from growing well. It prevents the child from having access to quality education. It prevents the child from growing or developing generally and integrating well into the society. So basically, that is what child labor is.
Okay, so I can't quite remember the year and age at the time, but I was very young, you know. I remember very well that my mom and dad will take us to the farm
Exactly.
And you would make to actually read, and we actually share everybody's portion, and you made to read before. Now, if you're not done, they can actually go home and leave you there till you finish yours. That is if you're being lazy.
Or you won't eat.
Or you won't eat.
Exactly.
So, and these are things that I practically went through growing up as a child. What was that at that time? What were they doing to me?
Well, thank you so much. This is the basic idea or knowledge people share outside when we normally go on monitor and field exercises. Well, I didn't get a chance to be in the farm. I lived all my life in Accra. But I presume that the work you were doing was not hazardous in the first place.
Okay.
So 2, it didn't deter you from going to school. 3, you were under supervision
By your parents. Basically.
And 3, I'm sure you are not working with any sharp objects, any poisonous substances.
We had a cutlass.
You had a cutlass, but well, you were under supervision.
Yeah.
And the cutlass, you were your age appropriate. Your age and the cutlass usage was just on track, and you were under supervision. And so that doesn't qualify you to be in child labor because you were under supervision. You were not working with any dangerous or harmful objects, even though you were under supervision, and I'm not sure the hours with which you were working was quite regulated by your parents, and it didn't affect your health. So it means, in general terms, all these children can work. We are not saying children cannot work. Children can work. They can do some form of work in the farm, probably run errands, fetch water, be listening to or taking care of their younger siblings, and all that. And so all these things in terms, it's a transition process for you as a child because you are under supervision. You were learning some form of trade from your parents. And so it was a learning process for you. It was a socialization process for you because back then you had all your siblings gathered together. You were chatting whilst your parents were working, or probably if you engaged in some work. It wasn't work that posed a threat to your health. It didn't deter you from going to school. I'm not sure you'll be seated here by now. It didn't pose any threat to your general development. So in totality, you were under supervision and devoid of all these points that have stated in there. And so it didn't draw it. So that cannot be stated as child labor.
Okay, interesting. So let me get to Mr. Tego. So what is your overview of that from what you said?
Yeah, Esther had rightly digested it. When somebody asks you a simple question, what is child labor? This is what the indicators that she has given. Now, you have to consider those indicators to be able to say that it's child labor or it's not.
Okay.
It is work done by anybody under the age of 18. So it's 1 to 17. Good. And is the work affecting the health of the child? Any of them, if any of the indicators occur, you are caught. The health of the child. So, for example, a child is spraying agrochemicals, pesticides. We adults even suffer it. Then what about a child? So immediately the child enters into that category, then he is caught into child labor. It doesn't matter whether your parents were with you or not. Okay. It's affecting your health. The second one,
with supervision?
Yes, the supervision on he said no.
Okay.
The second one is education. Whilst your friends, the classrooms are opened and the teachers are standing there paid to teach, you are outside it doing any type of thing. It doesn't matter the length of time, the magnitude of the work. Once you are missing education because of the work, you are in child labor.
Even if it's under punishment base, because I remember then again,
yes,
in high school,
yes,
where these are things we're going through on a daily, because some of us were a bit on the other side of the fence anytime issues come up, and so you would be made to actually go and be reading whilst the others were in class.
Yes,
and I've done that a couple of times.
So
at that point, this was what it was.
So people always think that child labor is outside the school. There can be child labor in the school.
Okay.
Once these indicators are flouted, once any of them. So you can be in the school, go to school all right, but be involved in child labor, supervised by your
But the defense will be that it's a punishment.
Yes. So whatever the excuse, you can have many excuses for doing many things. Once these four parameters and the indicators are violated, you are caught.
Really?
So this is education. Why is the teacher standing there? So the punishment that we have, what we call punishment, should be things that reform the children. He came to school late, and you don't want him to come to school late again, doesn't mean you should take him out of the classroom whilst others are learning, and then put him under corporal punishment, cane him, or let him do something that will deny him education. Then the child is in school, but is still in child labor.
Wow.
Yeah. So once you miss these indicators, you will be confusing child work with labor. This same thing that weeding, like he has rightly said, the first job God gave to mankind is agriculture. So agriculture is healthy and it is very good. But when agriculture that God gave is taking you away from the classroom, then that is when it is. But what you were doing when your parents were there, I assumed that at that time schools were on vacation. If schools were not on vacation, then you were caught. If schools are on vacation, then you are free. Then it means your parents were supervising and all those things. And then the other parameter is development. Development of the child. The child must live like a child. He must grow like a child. You go to the farm, you go to any work, and you see a child carrying a certain type of load. And the load is sinking the neck.
We carry
Charlie. And then you see that there are children who have become a pum-pum.
Yeah.
You know a pum-pum.
At that age.
Yeah, you scratch the part of their head and it is clayey substance coming out. They are stunted growth. So the work the child is doing is affecting the child's development. So once those things come in, people say, for what distance should I walk? What weight and the rest? When you look at the child's the way the child is made, there is a type of weight and a distance the child can cover. Even if you are a parent, with that scientific measure, you can see that this child is suffering under this load. So when we say child labor, you have to use these 4 things we have mentioned to measure. And it is the things we do that we call learning at home. It's the same things that graduate and cross the thin line to become labor. So a child could be learning, which is okay and accepted by law. But once it misses any of the 4 things we have indicated, then the household learning process is now being abused and it becomes labor.
Interesting. We'll get to the aspect of what we can do to even get a better understanding of how to report some of these issues and all of that. But let's look at another issue that a lot of people conflict, and that's child labor and child abuse. So can we understand what the abuse is and what the labor is in this regard?
Okay, so child abuse is basically taking the rights from the... So child labor is a form of child abuse.
Okay.
So child abuse is broad. You have in neglect, you have in taking the rights of the children. So child labor forms parts of the abuse of children. And so child abuse basically is taking the rights from the children. You know, children there are 5 basic rights that children must not be denied. Rights to education, right to good health, right to recreation, as Mr. Tego had rightly indicated, right to family life, and right to general development in their lives. So when these things are taken from them, and then their rights, you know, rights comes with responsibility. So once the rights are taken and they are not even responsibilities for the children, then automatically their children are being abused, because some are abused some are raped, some are neglected by family, some are taken out of school, as we've rightly said, some do not have access to quality education and good health, some do not even have the energy to even play around. We've gone to communities where you see some children shying away from community activities. You ask them questions, they do not want to come out boldly, they are shy and all that. So once these indicators come in and once these children are going through these activities, then we saw the children are into child abuse. So generally, child labor forms part of child abuse, which is a broader spectrum in terms of rights and responsibilities of children.
Okay, Mr. Tego, let's look at the sectors where we can find most of these occurrences when it comes to child labor. Do we have specific places that we know that it's really going on?
Yeah, we do. Because I come from the trade union. In areas where the trade unions have organized, that is in the formal sector, and as part of our conditions of work around, we cannot employ a child. So within that environment where unions and employers and governments are working together, you cannot have children because they cannot be employed. So that is the formal economy. In the informal economy, where the regulations is a survival of the fittest, nobody sees the farm, nobody sees certain areas, even those areas that we sit on the streets. Those are areas where you find a lot of child labor. So in Ghana, for example, broadly the whole of Africa and the world, over 70% of child labor occurs in agriculture.
Okay.
So it's in, when I say agriculture in this case, I include shepherding. I'm including fisheries. When you go on Lake Volta, it is just normal. Children on Lake Volta dive. So the tilapia we take and it's a delicacy. Children dive into the lake.
Yeah.
And then when you look at the Lake Volta, when you are driving along, you can see some small trees, shrubs coming up. And because it's the biggest man-made lake in Africa, those small things you are seeing are huge trees underwater.
Okay.
And then the water is just covering it because it's man-made. So when the fishermen cast the net goes to entangle with these things. And it is under those things that the tilapia grows and they live. So what mostly happens, those small canoes you see around Kpando, you see around Botuasi and on the lake, is children who dive into it, go to remove both the net and the fish. And in the process, they get injured. Some never come back, and there's danger. So on the lake, it's a dangerous area. When you come to agriculture too, children, like I said earlier on, are not allowed by law to do anything concerning agrochemicals. It's zero. They cannot do anything. Sometimes we say that they should fetch water to the place and then leave whilst the parents do the spraying. In the process of even fetching the water, we have detected that when you finish spraying the agrochemicals, you have polluted the whole area. So if the children in their play, they pass through the sprayed areas, although they didn't spray, they brought only water, they have contaminated themselves because agrochemicals, that is pesticide, fungicide, weedicide, pest, the side means killer. So it's pest killer, weed killer. And if it can kill them, it can kill the child too. And it is even killing us as adults. So it's a no for children. I don't need to talk about the streets in Accra. That we all see. The streets in Accra, we all see. People think that is the only child labor in its worst form that we see. It is not. That is only the window. There are a lot of things. We say that hard to reach areas where you cannot reach, and children are working there. So it's in agriculture, and it is in mining and quarrying. I don't need to talk about Galamsey. We know Galamsey itself. So whenever you see a child around a Galamsey site, they use mercury, they use cyanide, they use those chemicals. Which are dangerous. So the child's presence in that environment exposes the child to a health hazard. So those areas, and the three most dangerous occupations in the world, according to the ILO, are mining and quarrying, construction, and agriculture. These three, it doesn't come in any order, but these three. So children in these three areas already are exposed to hazardous conditions, and they need extra care to either take them out of there immediately, or if they are age appropriate, they can be protected around those environments. So this in Ghana, these are the areas. Yes. There are a number of them who are also in Kaya, in head porterage, and you see them in the market areas. And I continue to say that those are the visible ones we see, but they are not the worst ones.
Yeah.
There are worse ones out there.
Interesting stuff. If you just got tuning this morning, we're doing a Prime Insight. We're looking at child labor here in the studio. I've been joined by Esther Ofori Ajiman. She's coming from the Labor Department. She's Assistant Chief Labor Officer. Mr. Andrew Stego is also the Deputy General Secretary for GAWU, and they're both helping us understand the situation on the grounds. But don't forget that on the 12th of June, actually, on the 12th of June, we're going to have the celebration of World Day Against Child Labor. We'll have a conversation around that one too as well, and see what we have put together for ourselves this coming June for the celebration. But if you just join us here on the show, you can send your messages on social media. Our WhatsApp line is active. If you have any experience with child labor, if you're even 17 years old and you're watching right now and you've gone through that in the past, you want to share with us, you can send it to us. And if you're a parent, you are watching right now and you are also not too sure about what exactly you're doing to your child, and you want an understanding of what you're doing, you can send the practical nature of the situation to us, and my guests in the studio will help us understand them as well here on the show. Now, new global estimate for the year 2022 actually indicated that some 352 million children work actually exist. Of these, 246 million children are more involved in child labor for the abolition, and also 187 million of whom are also between the ages of 5 and 14 years of age. Now, a staggering 180 million are working in the worst forms of child labor, which at least 8 million in worse forms such as child prostitution, forced labor, and armed conflict. In Ghana, how are the stats looking in terms of those who are involved in it, in terms of who is pushing them into it, and all of that from your office?
Oh, okay. So, in Ghana, data has always been a challenge for, let me say, almost every country that we've met in terms of data on child labor. But the last data we had in Ghana on child labor was the Ghana Living Standards Survey in 2014. Okay. And that projected about 5.3 million children in child labor. And based on these statistics, Ghana is we are yet to have another round of child labor survey this year. Okay. And we are yet to give the concrete figures on in there. But I am coming from the Labor Department. The Labor Department, it's under the Ministry of Employment and Labor Relations, and in Ghana, it is the ministry that regulates the world of work in terms of ensuring that decent work tenants are abided by people in the world of work. And Labor Departments have labor officers who go around to the field to ensure that people who work with children abide by the law, or they are caught up with the law.
It happens here in Ghana?
Yes, it happens. The Labor Department is a sole department in Ghana who acts as the Ghana police in terms of employment of regulating the world of work in Ghana.
Labor police.
Labor police.
Labor police.
Aside even us doing labor inspections, it's one of our core mandates. But aside doing labor inspections, the Labor Department is engaged in a lot of functions. We regulate private employment agencies. We do workmen's compensation. We do industrial relations, settling of disputes in the Labor Department. Having said that, the labor inspectors go into the field to ensure that labor inspections is carried out so that every child is removed from child labor, ensure that employer-employee relationship is regulated on daily basis. When Mr. Tego was talking, he stated clearly that we had a major challenge going into the informal sector where child labor issues are often perpetrated because due to lack of funds, due to mobility of officers and all that. So it was very difficult. But in recent times, we've been able to have trainings where we've been able to go to the informal sector where a larger chunk of children are engaged in child labor, because over the years we do not go into the informal sector. We go to the formal sectors, we go to offices, we go to restaurants where it will be very difficult to find children working in there. And sometimes even in the informal sector, it is so difficult because going into people's homes, going into, let's say, for instance, Tema Station, penetrating into people's offices, talking to them, even sometimes getting the answers, the feedback from them is so difficult because sometimes when they see you, in quotes, they think you are coming in there to report them or something of the sort. So it is very difficult to penetrate into the informal sector. But having trained labor officers to do their work very well, this time around, we are able to go into the informal sector, have some figures on child labor, and report accordingly. So basically, data on child labor in the country for now, as it stands, I have already stated, it dates back to the GLSS round 6, which was done in 2014, and the current one will be happening this year. And so basically, data is being styled, but we have at least from the 2014 data that we can speak to on child labor. As you have rightly indicated, in 2022, the ILO, International Labour Organization, and UNICEF also came up with a report on child labor. We estimated about 160 million children in child labor, and some of the major reasons they had attributed was the rise of COVID.
Okay.
You know, COVID set in, and a lot of parents lost their jobs. Children had to be pushed into the field to go work and
all that
support
has been lost
their family. Exactly. So based on all these global estimates and the global estimates in Ghana, you could see that child labor is on ascendancy. And it beholds more on us as governments and media, the private sector, the NGOs, every individual in Ghana to ensure that child labor is eradicated in Ghana. And I say this because we have a target of 2025 of eliminating child labor completely from
2025.
2025.
It looks positive.
2 years more.
It looks positive.
No.
It doesn't look.
It doesn't.
Mr. Tego says it doesn't look
Mr.
positive.
Tego's side, it is not possible. For my side,
It's possible.
I think it is possible.
Yeah.
Everything
But
is
it
possible.
will take Ghanaians to help you achieve that, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so that's the play we're sending out to Ghanaians right now. We're just wrapping up because of our time, but let's quickly look at the fact that we have a commemoration coming up with regards to this. What are we doing on that day?
Is it okay to just add something to the statistics?
Okay.
One, when you cut 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 children, 1 out of every 5 is in child labor.
Okay, that is basic.
Basic. And
Great.
then when you look at the ILO estimates, ILO UNICEF estimate, globally 160 million, and it is estimated that Africa alone, when you look at the total in Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, is more than the rest of the world combined.
Whoa.
So that is how. And in the past years, in Ghana leads addressing child labor in Africa.
Okay.
We lead the process. So when you look at broad Africa, we are more than. But when you look at Ghana, I think we are working and coming down. That's why Esther was
she's positive about the 2025.
But 2025, to get to zero, I have a problem. We will get to zero.
I know. Okay, so maybe we might just do this in two folds, and it's because we're going to be doing the celebration in June.
Yeah, June.
Yeah.
So maybe we can have this conversation again. Maybe prior to the day, 2 days to the day, or something like that. I'll let my producers work on it and then see how best we can do it. But it's something that we're looking forward to from your office.
Yes.
We're positive about this celebration as well.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Your last remarks. And then I'll take hers too as well, and then we're
coming from the trade union, we always say that agriculture without child labor is possible, and it takes you and me to address it. So let's use the World Day celebration to join efforts to ensure that every child in Ghana is in the classroom and it is operating from the classroom, and adults, you and I and the farmer, are in decent work.
Absolutely.
And we in the trade unions, we are working with government to ensure that we have a child labor-free community, child labor-free agriculture, and ultimately a child labor-free Ghana. And that is possible.
Thank you so much. Madam Child Labor.
Exactly. I like that.
So your last words you want to say,
Right,
and then
so Mr. Tego has summed everything up. But before I come to my last statement, I want to state it very clear that Ghana has a national plan of action against the elimination of child labor, which it is currently under review, and we are in the last stage of launching a new NPA.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it beholds on every person in society has a role in our national plan of action. And the national plan of action is like a Bible for Ghana in terms of child labor. Yeah. And it beholds on everybody in community, in our communities, in our society, where we sit now, to make sure that child labor is eliminated from Ghana. It is not just a government-led activity. Because often at times when you go to the communities and you talk about child labor, they say, oh, we're buying for Naba. And Ghanaians talk as if child labor is a government thing. But child labor is a national problem because it affects our very national development. When a chunk of children are engaged in child labor, you can imagine how our future will look like.
Yeah.
It means our future will be very gloomy. It means we have no future for our children. Our national development will be stalled. And as I sit here, our cocoa is being threatened in the international market because the international world is saying that children are engaged in child labor in terms of cocoa production and the supply chain. And so you could see that in the economic development, our Ghana is being threatened. In terms of our children's future, we are threatened. Our national development is being stalled. And so it is not a ministry problem. It is not a media problem. It's not
a national issue.
Exactly. It is a national issue that needs a concerted effort to be able to eradicate child labor. And the 12th of June, we are projecting child labor because the global theme for the world against this year is that protect children from child labor more than ever. Okay. But we have domesticated the global theme to read intensify action against child labor. Do it now, do it fast.
Okay.
And the emphasis is on the do it now, do it fast, because we are looking at 2025. And that sums up everything that we should all come on board and ensure that child labor is reduced. I know Mr. Tego says this is not possible, but at least reduce to the direct minimum.
Yeah.
It can start from our homes.
He will change his mind tomorrow. Don't worry.
We have to preach it for us. We as parents, we preach it. We need pastors. We need imams. We need people on the streets. We need a chance. The way young children come on social media and talk about issues. Child labor is a national problem, and I need people to talk about it.
Okay, so political manifesto. Add child labor to the manifesto.
We'll vote for you.
Don't vote for them.
Okay. So we promise that we'll have another conversation on this before the celebration of the day in June. So yeah, we'll work around that. But many thanks to you both for coming and sharing this with us. It's been insightful, and I'm grateful you were able to make it. So Esther Furiajman is coming from the Labor Department. She's the Assistant Chief Officer, and also had Mr. Andrew Stego, is the Deputy General Secretary, GAU, also joining us this morning here on the show on the issue of child labor. And that's our prime insight for this morning here on the show.